Hi, and welcome to the Meta Performance Podcast, where we share stories of people who get after it in work, sport, and life. And we've got a good one today. I am joined today by Theresa Andrews, and in no particular order, she's a friend, former colleague. Oh, and by the way, has won 2 gold medals in the Olympic swimming. And it was just a good reminder as I was looking for guests to come on our podcast is how often we are surrounded by people who've done some really cool stuff. And so that's why I'm really looking forward to our conversation with Theresa. She's, as I mentioned, Olympic gold medalist, moved on to big executive roles. And I want to talk about that transition. So Theresa, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell us your backstory as far back and as far forward as you want to take it.
Yeah. Well, Michael, you're a great colleague. And you and I were just talking a little bit before we started the podcast that it was nice to catch up last week. And it's nice to go back and refresh some of the memories that we're going to share and talk about, my swimming performance and then into my career performance. And thrilled to be here with the Meta Performance team and really excited for what you're doing and what you're bringing out to folks out in the world. Yeah. So, little old Theresa Andrews, 2 gold medals in the 1984 Olympics. 100-meter backstroke and the 400 medley relay. I always like to share with folks, I swam out of Baltimore. And the reason I bring that up is that there's a little other swimmer known as Michael Phelps. And Michael is from the same club and same coach that I swam for. So anytime I see Michael, I always tell him he has the most medals, but I have the first. So I was the first gold medalist in Maryland, and North Baltimore Aquatic Club has since put on close to 14 Olympians besides Michael and I. But it's special because of the organization. I always tell folks my coach didn't teach me to be a fast swimmer. He taught me how to be a good thinker and how to really think through high levels of stress, no level of stress, and really how to build that skill muscle that I think as we get talking together, that really carried me into my work and my success in my professional career. Started my collegiate career at Indiana University, swam there for a year, and we won Big Ten championships, and I won 6 Big Ten titles there, and then transferred to the University of Florida, won NCAA championships there, and just recently, this past fall, got inducted to the University of Florida Swimming Athletic Hall, or the Athletic Hall of Fame, which was quite exciting after all these years. Career-wise, this is kind of interesting for me. I'll just share this, and we can jump into it. But career-wise, I started off as a recreational therapist at the National Rehab Hospital in Washington, D.C., worked with spinal cord injuries and head injury patients for a few years, went and got my master's at Ohio State in clinical social work. And I was a pediatric oncology social worker at UVA Hospital for 10 years. And then I made this jump into banking. And
Logical.
Joined Bank of America. And really the compliment there when I got into Bank of America was really my operation the clinical background of how to handle conflict, how to get teams to work together and get agreement was a skill set that would naturally flew into large teams at the bank. I ran call centers, I ran retail centers, and it was a great experience being there for 14 years. But I knew I wanted to go back to healthcare. And so I came back, and that's where you and I started our friendship at Humana, and finished my career at Humana of 11 years and had various operational roles there. But I think if I pull a thread all the way through what are common threads from my swimming career into my work career was that no matter what in athletics, you're a part of a team and you have to work together to help each other achieve things. It's not an individual sport. And I think I brought that into large teams I ran, is to really bring the best out of each person to really complement the overall success where we wanted to go. Yeah, but I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, that's awesome. Great introduction. And I think I want to follow that arc in our conversation. So my wife was a swimmer, grew actually as a backstroker. So she was super excited that we're interviewing you today. So she's always talked about being at the pool twice a day, hours on end. What did that level of sacrifice teach you about commitment that still shapes how you approach challenges today?
I think, a typical training day for me was 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I had 2 weeks off out of the year from age 14 to 20. So actually, when I started my work life, I'm like, what? I only have to show up 8 hours? This is pretty good. God. And I get vacation? This is pretty easy. I think what it taught me was there are times when you didn't want to go to the pool. There's times in December is really probably one of the worst times in swimming because you're, at that time you're really overtraining then you start coming down for spring for nationals and tapering. But, December and January are some of the toughest months where you're just trudging and trying to get through it. And so I think it kind of taught me in my work life that sometimes in projects and things, you're going to have peaks and valleys,
Hmm.
and they're not permanent. Right? This is temporary. And so I think having that tenacity to get through some of the tougher times helped me kind of correlate in my life because you had to kind of push through those things.
Yeah.
And I think the other part I'd say is just I really rely heavily on my teammates. I mean, and my teammates were younger. I mean, I had eighth graders. I swam with high school students when I was training for the Olympics, but they, even though they weren't at the same level of swimming, we all were in the pool together. And
Hmm.
everybody knows when someone's having a tough day. And so I think probably when I went into my work life, I always wanted to make sure I joined teams that were really people who cared about each other and were ready to help each other
Yeah.
because that's the only way you get through these projects and work.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think that playing that long game, there's a saying that I'd like to say that came from a famous, I guess he would fall in the country genre, but there's a line in one of his songs that says, "You're just the wave, you're not the ocean." And that's the way I tried to impart on folks is that,
Yes.
this turbulence we're feeling right now, it's just a wave. It's not the ocean. It's like we're
Yeah.
going to get through it. We're going to get past it.
Yeah.
And taking that long view is so important.
Yeah. To build on that too, Michael, I would say that one of the other things I learned in swimming is I was never supposed to make the Olympic team. I wasn't supposed to medal. And so I was really a long shot going into the Olympics in 84. And leading up to the 84 Olympics, I had won in 1981. I won my one and only national title. And then I was always the just there swimmer.
Hmm.
And I think probably one of the biggest things I had to accept going into 84 was get really humble and accept responsibility that I was not doing everything I could to make the world championship team and the Pan America teams, which I missed by 1/100th of a second. I mean, literally, I got third and I have to look up at that wall and I have to go back and swim 6 hours a day in the next, for the next year and don't know whether it's going to pay off. And I was very, pointing the finger at everybody else. And so I think what I also learned in those years of swimming that I carried into work is if I'm falling short of a promotion, if I'm falling short and everyone else is getting out ahead, is always reflecting of, am I doing everything I possibly could? Am I really, and that's hard. You got to be humble. You can't
Hmm.
have, the outside world tell you, yeah, you are. But when you start accepting and being more humble about, am I really giving everything emotionally, physically, and cognitively, then things start coming together. And in 84, I had to have a really hard look in the mirror and say, you have to go into this year really giving everything you can and being open to people's guidance to what they want you to do.
I love that. I don't know if you remember Deborah Clary from Humana, but I had her on the podcast. It's probably been about 6 weeks. And, she's written a book on curiosity. And one of the things that really resonated with me, which is kind of what you're hinting at, is being curious isn't just about curious about other things. You also have to be curious about yourself and really do that hard work to say, am I really doing everything that I can to put myself in a position to make the team, to win a gold medal, to get a promotion, to whatever it is? Am I doing everything and taking accountability for those things?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think when you asked the question earlier about, what did I learn and, some of the hours and the commitment I had, I also had to learn how to take feedback. I mean, that's just part of swimming. I mean, you're getting feedback, good feedback, but you're also sometimes getting critical feedback and you just have to learn to roll with that. And I always tell folks in my work life, hey, you need to be concerned when people stop coaching you.
Right. Right.
Like there's a different problem going on if your leader is not talking to you and not giving you feedback. And I had to learn, I had to learn that in like one of my roles I had at Humana. I was like, oh, my job is to bring the presentation or whoever I was bringing to something we had to present. And as long as my boss gave me it was 90% there. She just gave her 10% of what she wanted to put on it, but she didn't have to do 90% of the work. So I learned how to like quit getting so wounded. Like, oh, it wasn't perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I had to also
Mhm.
learn their style. Same thing with coaches. I went from Indiana coach to Florida to my coach in Baltimore, many different styles. So I had to learn how they provided feedback, how they coached, so I could receive it and also, work it in the pool.
Yeah, that's feedback. They say is a gift, and we just we do have to be open to receive it and not see it as threatening, and making sure we take what the intent is out of there. It's interesting because you've referenced a couple of times the teamwork, but yeah, when I think about swimming or when I think about cycling, it's an individual sport, and so although to win a meet you got to add all the points up, and
Yeah, yeah.
that's how the team wins. But I guess how do you reconcile that deeply individual nature of your sport or even individual potential with the importance of team?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks would think swimming's an individual sport, but you're in a pool every day with 30 people and you're swimming a set all the time. So I could see what lane 6 is doing all the way to lane 1. And lane 1 could be yelling over saying, "Hey, I saw you come off the turn. You didn't do this." I mean, we're all watching each other, or you're dragging on someone's feet to help pull you through a set, and I think I shared the story about the little 8th graders that in my last year of swimming, I swam in this last lane because it had the heat of the pool coming out. But I started off the year with them saying, "This is how this is going to work. I'm going to help you and I'm going to teach you how to get through these sets. Get behind me and I'm going to pull you." So in swimming, there's a lot of dragging, probably like running,
Hmm.
but we're helping each other. And people know when you're struggling and they will say, yell something out or just get behind me or swim next to me and I'll drag you through the set. At the end of the day, I have to get up on the block and swim it by myself. But you always have a lot of people behind you leading in there as you go off that block. So individually, it's all on the line by yourself, but still the build up is team, team, team the whole way.
Yeah, that's so true. Because I think about back playing collegiate soccer is, the coach is part of the team. The athletic trainer is part of the team because they're keeping you on the field. The strength coach is helping you. They're all part of that team. And it's not just the 11 people that are actually playing on the field. Everybody has part of that. I want to go back to your actual gold medal race, which I had to go back and rewatch. And even though I knew the outcome, it's still amazingly exciting to watch it happen.
Thank you.
I guess take us through what was going on in your mind during the race. And did you have a sense that something special was happening?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll take you back to the Olympic trials. So in
Perfect.
1984, to make the Olympic Games then, they selected the team 5 weeks before the Olympic Games. Now they select the team, I think probably maybe 3 or 4 months. The athletes might go back to their club team and then they'll stage and form the team a month out and do Olympic training camps and everything else. And so going into the Olympic trials at Indianapolis, I was seated 5th at night. And they only take the top 2 girls in each athletes in each event. The one athlete that was seated first at night was Sue Walsh, and she was the American record holder and held the American record in 100-meter backstroke for 5 years. So logic says you're vying for one spot, right? All other 7 girls are trying to vie for one more spot to make the team. And I'm in lane 5 in the outside lane. And I can remember it's like, oh my God, here it goes again. I'm going to be the just there swimmer and feeling really scared just minutes before I'm getting ready to go swim this race and believe that I could push through this. And so the one thing I trained all year long, every day, if my coach gave me 6100s to do, if he gave me 2200s to do, I would tell myself the last 5, no matter what I was doing in a set, how long it was, how hard it was, the last 5, I would scream in my head, "Get going now, now, now." So no matter how fatigued I was physically, how emotionally drained I was from the set, because you just get beaten up by doing a lot of the conditioning. That I would scream that so that I could condition my brain to override my body and keep accelerating, even though everything else was telling me to stop. So that after a year of doing that, when I got to the last 25 meters at the Olympic trials, I would scream, "Right now, go." And that's when I started passing the girls and I got second and I made the team and I upsetted the American record holder. She got third. It was Betsy Mitchell who won. So it was a a big upset at trials. And then when I got to the Olympics, I was seated third at night, and it was really exciting because my coach couldn't talk me off between prelims. He's like, why are you need to calm down. Because again, prelims and finals are swum in the same day back in 1984. He goes, why are you so excited? I said, Murray, I know all the girls. I have swum all these girls internationally for years. I know their pattern. I know what they do. And I said, all these girls either stay at their time or they're going to go slower. None of them go faster at night. I always go faster at night. I just swam my best time in my life in the morning. So I knew, oh my gosh, I'm going to go faster. So Michael, I'm saying, oh my God, I'm going to get the bronze. I'm going to get the bronze. So when I got to the finals, you watch the race. I'm at the fourth, I'm turning and I'm swimming backstroke. So I can see the wall and I can see I'm fourth, and I'm fourth to the last 75 meters. And I screamed, now, get going now. And I moved up from fourth to third to second to 8/100ths is the difference between the gold and the silver.
Yeah, it's and there's a moment where there's kind of almost feels like you all have taken this like deep breath of waiting to make sure it really happened.
Well, because just like in racehorse, the board can shuffle, and I looked, and actually it was my teammate. She's a great sportsman. I mean, it was her race to win. She was seated number one, but she's the one who turned to me and said, hey, you just won this race. And that's when I just was like, wow. And it's been 40 plus years, 45 years, and it'll be 45 years in 2028. And every time I do talks and share the experience, they go, well, when do you come off of that? And I said, I'll let you know. When do you come off that high of the gold medal? And not that I carry it around, you know me, you worked with me at UMass. I rarely, if someone asks me, I'll share it, but it's a life experience that I certainly am grateful for, and the accumulative experience of all the help that people helped me get there to what I achieved.
Yeah. It's interesting because the part about the almost there swimmer that you've talked about a few times, I could see how that could easily really block you, in a number of ways, give you pre-race anxiety. What was there any certain technique or tool that you kind of learned to overcome that, or just to not even make it part of the equation when you got up on the blocks?
I think the two things happened. It's interesting. That spring of 83, there were nationals, right? So this is about 5 months before the Olympic trials. I took a year off from the University of Florida to go home and train for the Olympics. And so all the other girls were swimming collegiately, seeing each other. So I show up to nationals. They hadn't seen me in 6 months. They forgot about me. And so I'm kind of, all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, there's Theresa Andrews, right? Where's she been? And I end up getting second in the 100 back, and I got second in the 200 back. And we come back, and my coach, after I won in LA, afterwards, even though I'm done swimming, I retired, he still wanted to debrief so he could learn what should he do differently with athletes that are under his, that he was coaching. And so he goes, I just have to ask you a question. We came out of spring nationals, second and second. I thought you had to win the 100 to even have a shot to make the team, and you were elated. And I didn't want to mess with this. You were excited. He goes, but why? He goes, I just thought, why were you so excited? And I said, Murray, I was so excited because I knew that those girls had to go back for the next 3 months and think about me. They knew I was conditioned. They knew I was coming, and I had 3 more months. I had 3 more months to keep getting conditioned for what I was going to go do. So I knew I was in their heads. They were not in my head. So I think that was a big boost in my confidence. And the other thing I'd say is, man, visualizing is so powerful, but you've got to commit the time to spending and watching and practicing that video. And I practiced for a full year every night before I went to bed. I knew every 1/100th of a second of that race. And if I visualized from diving into the pool, grabbing the blocks, putting my hand in position and my feet, if it wasn't exact, I stopped the video and I went back and did it again. And I probably did not do a whole race for 9 months in my head. I had to stop it and go again, stop and go again, because I didn't want any aspect of that was not going to be perfect. And I think a lot of folks think they got to just run through it and they think they're done. It's really committing to saying, does it feel right? Does it, so that my autopilot went in. And I think that that was tremendous. And then when I got into the finals, I blocked people out. I mean, I learned my lesson that when I went into the ready room, I would not interact with anybody. I wasn't being rude. Good luck. But I had a towel over my head and I was looking at my feet and I was just focused on what I had to do between the two lanes and where I had to deliver.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned visualization because it is so important. And a lot of people, I mean, what's amazing about visualization is, it works the same neural pathways as the actual experience. And that's why it works and what you're creating is those connections but to your point, you have to get it right. You can't kind of half-ass your way through a
Right.
visualization practice.
Right. And it takes skills, right? I've been visualizing my race since I was 14 years old. It took me from 14 to 20 to really learn how to perfect it. And I have
Hmm.
it, I should have it down because I've spent 6 years doing it. So when you first start it, it does feel clunky. It's like meditating, right? Meditating feels, it's awkward at first until you really learn how to do it. But I'll share this. When I was at Bank of America and they were having me do an Olympic talk, an Olympic experience with their leadership team, I went the day before they were bringing me in to test the mic, get me on stage and make sure everything was all set. Well, there was our most senior woman leader with the retail banking. And there she was on stage doing her whole presentation. And it's like the bulb went off, like even in your work life, at any level you go in your career, they're practicing what they're doing. She looked like it was always off the cuff. The next day I saw her present and looked loosey goosey and all relaxed, but she was up on that stage practicing her material. And I went, same thing in work life at
Hmm.
that level. They don't just show up and I guess I've seen like at board meetings, I would watch, our senior leaders because I just happen to be part of some of that. And they're all practicing their material. And I was like, okay, that was an aha moment for me. Like, okay, even in your work life, you carry those same skills in. You just don't
Yeah.
walk in not
No,
prepared.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So to talk about life after the pool, I'm always interested in these transitional moments, whether it's, my most recent one is going from working to not working or actually I should say not working to or working to working on things I want to do. But a lot of athletes have trouble with that because their sport has been their identity. And I guess, how did you deal with that? What challenges did you face as you were making that transition out of the sport into life?
Yeah. I think, well, I will tell you, I think physically, right. When you're swimming 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, and you're running and you're lifting, if you had a bad day, you just work the hell out of it. Your endorphins just worked out physically. So I think that, I mean, I'll share my first year post Olympics. I was in a deep depression. I didn't know why. And then I finally figured out the way I was coping in life. I coped through physical activity. And then I had to really learn post Olympics after a year that I didn't have that same coping mechanism anymore. I had to learn new ones. I'm a huge proponent of therapy. I had a toolbox that worked very effectively through the Olympic Games, but that toolbox didn't help me in life. It didn't help me transition into things. So just like having a psychologist for sports psychology, I'm a big proponent that, when someone's stuck, that's the beauty of therapy. I always call them the ace in my back pocket. And I've always kept one in my back pocket whenever I feel like, oh, I'm a little stuck. But the other thing I'd say in that first year post swimming was I didn't how would I say this? I got feedback every day with that clock. Every day you're racing a clock and you have to meet the time set, the splits that you were supposed to be doing. So every day I left the pool with, I had a good day or I had a bad day. I knew, or I'd readjust and rethink. But when went into work, you might not get any feedback for twice a year, right? Or
Hmm.
once a week you have a meeting with your boss, but you're not getting that immediate feedback. So I had to relearn how to have what my worth was and my meaning of what was that I felt valued when I made an impact on something. And that took me a few years to kind of get reacclimated and adjusted. But and then reaching out and talking to other folks. I mean, I had another teammate of mine when we both retired at University of Florida. We were walking through campus one day, and she said to me, she goes, "Teresa, I'm really concerned." I said, "What are you concerned about?" She goes, "I can't get up before 10." I go, "I don't get up before 11." Because we could sleep in for the first time in our lives. And we just, like, what is this?
What I love that. What was that the biggest thing you discovered in making your transition into corporate life? Was this, I need to find a different way to manage
I think
stress, et
the
cetera, or what
yeah,
was there something else?
I think what's also different in my experience and the current athletes that might have retired and go into work is that we were still like 1984 was really the last amateur Olympics. There's no there's no funding, there was no money. I mean, so I always had to think about a degree and start a career and think about what I was going to be doing in parallel to when I came out and retired. I think athletes today with NIL money and with the potential professionalism, there's a whole nother different transition financially that they face when if they're leaving and they're not having that income anymore. Now they got to face something different. But I think for me, I knew I was always going to have. That's why I retired in '84. Everyone's like, "Why didn't you go back to '88, 1988 Olympics?" I'm like, I had to start working. I didn't. There was no, there was no funding. It's called mom and dad.
Yeah,
So I
right.
do think there are some different hurdles for those athletes that are making the money that they are making today. But for me, it was that immediate feedback that you were getting every day of what was good and what, how to, you know, readjust into something else. The transition of my career from a social worker to banking, I think some of that was just some of my competitive juices. Like when I got done, I know I didn't want to get into sales and things like that. I really liked the family work that I did and the oncology work I did. But after 10 years, my competitive juices started coming back going, I think I'd like to get into having to compete again and having to
Hmm.
push numbers. And so that's kind of like how I made those transitions into financial banking and things like that.
And so you ended up coming back to healthcare. I guess what was the driver behind that?
I always love hospitals. I thought I would be a nurse or a doctor. At one point in my career, I became a clinical social worker. Love helping families. I don't know what that attraction was that helping people through either chronic conditions or, medical crisis and help family units be successful. I think, I'd tell I kind of like in swimming and team war, trying to help the physicians and nurses know, hey, this individual has a team around them. It's their family and their extended family. It's not maybe how you and I would do it, but this is how this family unit does, and give them that space to be what that family unit needed to be to get through the crisis of what they were facing with their loved one. And so I knew Humana was something that was interested in me. I almost got the best of both worlds. I got to bring my financial background and lead operations, but I was very front facing with our seniors. And so I got to see the impact of what the organization was doing and helping seniors with their health. And so it resonated very well for me. And so it was a really nice complement of all my accumulative work experience.
Uh, one of the things as an athlete we learn hopefully early on is, you control what you could control and influence what you can't, but let the rest go. And I often find that part of what attracts people to sport is the fact that they've got control over their body, they've got control over a lot of the situation. Was But that's different from a Fortune 50 healthcare company with 50 something thousand employees. Was that like, how did you deal with that tension of like, gosh, if I were just by myself, I could get this done, but I had this slow moving ship.
Yeah, I think for me, every area in my career path that I went into, one of the most important things was that leader I was going to work for. And so when I went to interview, and that was my bar, was if I didn't get a sense that we were not going to get each other and it wasn't going to be a fit. I learned early in my career because I did have a boss that they were a circle and I was a square. And it wasn't like I wasn't effective and they weren't effective, but I knew he was not getting me. It's almost in swimming too. I knew certain coaches when you were getting recruited. There's a reason I went to University of Florida. I knew that coach got me academically. I knew that coach got me athletically. He got me emotionally where I had to grow in my career swimming wise and the pool and what I needed to keep mastering. But if I didn't get a sense that coach was just going to treat me like a 102 or a 56 backstroker, I wouldn't go to that program, right? Because I could tell. And I had that same skill set when I would go and interview. They were interviewing me. Was I going to be a fit? But I was interviewing them going, if I didn't get a sense, I would just pass on the job because it wasn't going to be good. So I think I never felt like I was in that large company, and never felt I always got into roles that I could help accelerate and move past because I had a coach. I had a leader that empowered me to let me do it. And that's why I think I felt very good but I also knew that there were certain roles I was being asked to look at. And I knew that what you just described, I wasn't going to be a fit.
Yeah. It's your Freudian slip on the
Yeah.
leader coach. I'm going to pull that out because I think that is often the missing thing is I think as this mark of a true leader is someone who is a coach,
Yeah.
who sees
Yeah.
himself as a coach. And how do I create an environment? Because if you have a team, it's like any other team, different things are going to motivate different people. And so how do you create an environment that you're turning all the dials and knobs to, you know, create an environment that allows everybody to perform at their absolute best?
Yeah. I had a senior leader at the bank when I was moving up and running retail banking. And the senior leader, as I was looking to try to grow further at the bank, and she said to me once, and I've shared sometimes when folks come to me for mentoring. She said, Theresa, what's your brand? I go, my brand? This is my brand. And she goes, yeah, but what would people say about you? What would your peers say about you? What would your business partners that work with you, what would they really say about you if you weren't in the room? And that was an aha moment, because not when you start your career, but as you grow in your career, you've got to be mindful that someone could be walking in the hallway and that could be the deal breaker because of how your brand's carried to them. And so being open when you do those mid-years or yearlies to go and talk to your business partners to reinforce what would you say positive about me, and not do it through an email, have a cup of coffee and just be ready for what comes back. Cause it's kind of eye-opening that one feedback I got early on in my career was that when I'm all business when you first meet me, and I don't allow people to talk on calls. And it's not that I needed to get through it because I'm kind of like my own coach. I'm like, here's our 5 things. That was really good feedback. They go, I've been with you personally. I know that that's not you, but your phone personality is different. You're firmer on the phone. And I was like, so I had to really learn how to pause myself and let other folks talk on the call and, and let that happen. And that was really good feedback. She goes, I'm with you personally. I know how authentic and easy and really open you are, but on a phone, you're very stern. And that was that was a good feedback for me, because she gave me feedback, which was, I know it's not intentional, but that's how you come across.
Right.
That's that's the kind of individual that you want. If you go and present, having a buddy in the room to say, can you watch it and truly give me feedback when I'm done, to help polish those little things that are in your control to work on. But if you're not open, you can't polish them.
Yeah. And that also requires a ton of trust to know that they're,
Yeah.
it's someone that is
Yeah.
doing this to help you, not
Yes,
for a
exactly.
gotcha moment.
But maybe because I'm to the audience out there, start with people who are the safe people. Don't go out to the, but that was a really powerful conversation, because it's like, wow, the rest of the time I think about how would they present me? What's my brand to them in that? Now, I didn't think about that in the pool, right? I didn't worry about, let me tell you, I know we're coming to quickly, but one of the best life lessons came from my mother. When I was a little girl and I was 12 years old, and I was beating the girls and the boys. I was beating the 15 and 17-year-olds in the pool. And one day I get 8th at a meet, and my mom goes, what are you doing? Like, well, something's wrong. Right. And I said, well, if I don't let so-and-so win, they won't invite me to the birthday party. I heard. But this is probably the best lesson I got at 12 years old. I always remember that I carried into my career. She sat me down. She said, Theresa, don't ever lower your game for someone. You're climbing. And then my parents never put any pressure on me, but they saw that I had this gift and I had this ability. And she's like, you never lower your game. And so even in my career, when I had people who had jealousy and they, oh, how'd you get there? I wouldn't lower my game, because they're not going anywhere. Like, I would always
Mm-hmm.
surround myself with people who are advancing, people who are, authentically advancing, right? And try to align myself to, what are you doing and how are you doing it? And can I meet with you to learn more about how I can advance those skills? But I think sometimes too, we can get caught up on, well, we want to make everybody happy, but again, for your own performance, you never lower your performance for somebody else. And that was just really, just a nice conversation I always kept in the back of my mind with my, for my mom.
Yeah, that's a great one. It it, it was funny thinking, preparing for the conversation, as you mentioned, I think right as we came on, or maybe it was before we came on, just about, we had a conversation last week just to kind of prep, and I also reflected back, and it brought up like memories. And one of the things the memory I have of probably the first or second time we worked together is you always came to things with a kind of, we're going to figure this out, or we'll get this. And that to me was like so refreshing because, often when you're working on a project, it can be a grind and you kind of get down and it's hard to keep, but it was always like, we'll figure this out. We always do. And a lot of that, I think, is the resilience that athletes build, that people build over time. And what I see sometimes with athletes, and I've experienced it myself, is we get so good at overcoming that we often don't see the signals of when we need to raise the white flag or ask for help. And we just think, I'll just keep putting my head down and keep bashing against this wall. And I guess, how did you deal with that? Or did you even experience that in your life?
Me, there's probably two stories I'll share. One is I had to raise my hand the last year in swimming. Coming home to Baltimore, I was going all in on whether I made the Olympic team or not. I was going to give 100% of myself physically, cognitively, emotionally to this goal. I went to my coach and said, I'm the body, you're the brain. I'm not going to fight you anymore. I mean, I fought my coach like, he was trying to make me the slowest swimmer in the world. You don't know what you're doing. One day I was driving home going, Theresa, he's not trying to make you the slowest swimmer. He's trying to make you the fastest, and you're fighting him on every aspect of what he wanted you to do, either in the dry land or in the water. And I did that for 6 years and it didn't get me anywhere. I missed the world championships. I missed the 1980 Olympic team when I was 16 years old. They took the top 3 girls and I was 4th at 16. I almost made that team. When I looked at that accountability, I'm like, and I'm talking about 2/10, 3/10 that I had to figure out how to get. That's how much I was missing these events. I wasn't like, I didn't have to drop, 3 seconds to make this team, but I had to figure out 5/10 to 8/100ths of a second. And that was enough that I had to give in and say, what do I need to do? I need help. I came home and surrounded myself with my family. I needed encouragement. I needed to be there when I was really struggling. And I struggled. There was valleys that year where I was doubting myself, but that's really important. Those 8th grade little boys, I'd come in and they knew I had a bad day or I had a bad morning, and they were there cheering me behind me as we were swimming an event or a practice. They're just as important to my success as Murray was and all these other folks. I think in work, I had a young lady, and I will tell you, when I was retiring and leaving, this one individual who worked for me reached out to me, and she goes, I'll always remember that you told me when she was working on something for me, it wasn't going well. And I said, hey, I want you to know something. If you go to bed and your tummy hurts 2 days in a row, you need to call me. I don't want your tummy hurting at night. And she goes, I will remember that rest of my life, Theresa, because that's a signal that you need to raise your hand and get more people involved. That's above us. And, Michael, at Humana, somebody knows how to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Someone's seen it. They know what to do. But I think when we go try to individually own it, that was a difference in my leader growth. Was I started learning how to raise my hand to my senior leader, engaging them. Not that I could handle it, but they usually could bring in, if I went to bed and I knew that I was hurting, my stomach was hurting, I was waking up, I knew to call my boss and say, we need to talk. We need to rally a different approach. And it was always welcomed. And it was always like, they much rather have you come sooner before the car goes off the cliff.
Yes. One of the best leaders I ever worked for, he taught me very early on, bad news early.
Yes.
He said, you give me the bad news early, we got time to fix it. We got time to message it. We got time to right the ship. If you wait till too late, all we're doing is scooping up poop is really what you ended up doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that story about the person on your team is is because it's, that saying that often says people don't remember what you say, they remember how you make them feel. And that's just so important. And it showed the caring, to them, the caring to say, look, you don't need to be losing sleep over this. If you're losing sleep, we got to do something different.
Yeah. And it was one of my early lessons, even in swimming my last year, was that I had to, tell folks when I was, having trouble or in doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of, just a lot of individuals that was not just Murray on the deck that really were invaluable to me that year and really helped my confidence and my skills to really carry that. I mean, at the end of the day, I had to get up on that block by myself. And it's pretty nerve wracking. That's when that visualization comes in. I mean, I will tell you to this day, July 31st, 1984, I will tell you is the most pressure I've ever felt in my lifetime when I got into that finals, the most.
I can't even imagine.
I have not felt anything ever close to it. I mean, I thought, oh my God, if I could just, as soon as the gun goes off, you're going. But leading up to that, I'm like, wow, this is, it was absolutely the most pressure I've felt in my life. So anything else felt pretty easy.
Right. Oh, I have a presentation. No big deal.
Yeah.
Can you still call out the visualization, and is it more real because you've now had the experience?
I think probably if anything, it's, what, I'll tell you what I call up and I still control to this day. It took me a year to unlearn the negative record. We all have an audio that plays. It's a worm, right? It's a worm in our head. We can't do it. Oh, they didn't like it. Oh, they're not liking me. And we walk out of a presentation. I always tell folks, watch yourself when you leave work or you're at home and you put that computer down for the day. What do you start with? Of 8 hours, you've done something. What do you start with? This didn't go well. This didn't go well. This didn't well. But you also did 100 other things, that 96 other things went well, but you don't give yourself any credit for that. You don't talk about it. You exhaust yourself with the 3 things that didn't go well. And then that was the thing I learned going into 84 was I spent more time on a one thing, but I did 15 other things better. So I always start my evenings at the end, like, what were the 5 things that went well? And then I give a little weight to the one thing that did not go well. And learning how to get rid of that negative record. I mean, it was really powerful. And so that even to this day, if I catch myself in a cycle, sometimes it can be activated, but I now know those, like, oh, I got to slow this down. I got to stop it, at least pause it, and don't let it kind of override what defining how I feel about myself or my worth or my performance. And that's really another skill set too. I think people don't realize, when they end their day today, when you end your day, what 3 things of the positives did you start with? Is a skill I carry.
Yeah, there's a tool I use with a lot of folks I work with that we just call celebrating the wins. And most people think, you have to hit a grand slam or you have to win a gold medal to count it as a win, and everything else looks like crap. And so this tool is literally to say, at the end of the day, it could be at the end of the week, whatever the period makes most sense, write all those wins. And they could be everything from, a friend bought me coffee. I had a good presentation, because you need to give your body, your brain, that evidence, not only that you are progressing, but that you are doing good things, because our brains we're wired for the negative. We're always looking for threats, and it does just sits in a loop in your head.
And I think the other thing to build on that too, Michael, is in what I learned in athletics from my coach is I swam for him close to 6 years, and he had my training plans written year 1, 2, 3, and 4 for an Olympic year. So I can only think in 4 years. So, if I'm coming into a role, I think about my first year, but I'm already building out the 3-year plan. What do we have to do to sequence? And I think what you're also talking about is it's also having the awareness, the insight when you're celebrating the wins. How do they sequence to the plan of what you have to build? So, okay, these are in sequence to the plan. I need to go this quarter to the mid-year, whatever performance you have, to the next one. But also what my coach taught me is we're never done, Theresa, because I have to get you through this foundation in year 1, because that'll take us in year 2 what I can build on. And then I can have more mastery, right? And in swimming, and in athletics, it's really gaining mastery. And that's, I remember someone saying to me after I got done swimming, God, it looks so easy. And I said, I hope so, because I did that for 6 years of my life. Really, right? And so even when I speak and I go and talk places, but I hope so, because I've been speaking for 30 years. I've been sharing my experiences, but it's also sequencing, that I got up on speaking, but not what I do today, but it started with an initial, 3 bullets of what I talked about, and then I build on it, and then I build on it. So I think it's also, when we talk about the visualization, it's also as an athlete, you have to have an emotional intelligence and insight. And so when you're acknowledging those celebrations, it's also having the insight to where does it sequence in the plan emotionally, physically, or cognitively in your plan. Then it makes sense. I think people get it
Hmm.
and will apply it more effectively.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great point and a great add to that. As we're starting to wind down, anything yet we haven't discussed that you thought, let's make sure we hit this that you wanted to?
I think, one thing I'd probably build on, and I use it a lot when I share is, when I was the Just There swimmer, probably one of the greatest lessons I learned. My coach gave me this lesson. It was probably, we were about 6 months out. I was really questioning whether I could make the Olympic team. And he goes, Teresa, we're gonna do this get out swim. And if you can beat all 7 guys in 200 back at practice, you can leave. And practices were 3 hours. You can leave early. Well, a get out swim for a swimmer is you break the world record to leave for 2 hours early. And I'm looking at all the guys, and they're all about high school guys, but they're still fairly time wise they're pretty close to me, and I had to beat all of them. So I'm okay. And he goes, well, wait a minute. Before we start the race, you're going to start at the blocks. But all 7 guys got to go to the backstroke flags, which were about 5 yards out from the wall. They had a head start. And he goes, okay, that's how the race is going to go. Take your mark. He goes, I go, wait, Murray, why are you giving them a head start? That's wrong. I can't possibly catch all 7. I can catch 5, but 2 with 5-yard head start, that's going to be hard for me to get. I said, why are you doing this to me? He goes, I'm not doing it to you. You're doing it to yourself. This is ready. Take your mark. No, stop. Bring it back. I go, why are you doing this? He goes, Teresa, I'm not. He goes, this is the exact head start you give every one of your competitors when we go to a meet. You predict the end. You don't go through the process. You predict the meet. Sue's going to be there. Betsy's this, and you're looking at the meet and you're judging it before you even gone through it and just do the process. You're predicting the end. He goes, how about this year? We just go to the meet and go through the process and let the end take care of itself. That was,
Wow.
when you talk about when I was in meetings and we were behind, everyone was predicting the end. And I think I was bringing in saying, let's just focus on the process. Let's focus on the plan. We'll
Yeah.
worry about the end. But everyone gets jammed up because they're so worried about the outcome. We need to be inspired by the outcome we want. But when we're doing preparations and we're doing things, we have to focus on, are we following the process? Let the outcome take care of itself. That was so powerful where it freed me up and I swam so much looser and didn't worry about whether it's if I get first, if I get fifth, I'm going to celebrate. We'll debrief afterwards. But in the moment when you're behind the block, I wish everybody had one time where they had a freeing moment where they got to do their full talent without any withholding fear. Because sometimes we're our worst competitor and our fear of ourselves. That's why we fall short, not because I didn't have the ability, not that I
Yeah.
didn't put the work in. I predicted the end, before, and not, I focused on predicting the end and didn't focus on the process.
Yeah, that's amazing. The best place to leave it, because I just love the whole thought of being, because in most 99.9% of the time, you have zero control over the outcome. You don't control the weather. You don't control who shows up. You don't control all these things. So focusing on the outcome and trying to predict that, you're trying to, you're basically just gambling. What you do control is your effort, how much work you do,
Yeah.
your preparation. And so I love this. Let the outcome inspire you,
Yes.
but do
But,
the work,
and then,
stick to the process.
and for me, Michael, I was trying to solve 0.3 of a second. So even that little bit of moment where I'm behind the block and I'm looking at Sue or I'm looking at Betsy Mitchell and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's 1/10, there's 2/10s. I hadn't even gotten the pool yet. He goes, you've already predicted, you've already given him a head start. So he goes, how about no head start this year, Teresa? How about if we just all get to the block? So when you asked the question earlier in the podcast about, how I approached my meets or my races, I came in with a clean, it's like, I'm going to go do my best swim possible. and put it all together. And then at the end, we'll judge it and we'll review it. But I'm not going to make those predictions like, oh my gosh, these folks are that kind of mental head start I was giving them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, last question: what are you doing with yourself now?
Yeah. So I got to retire this year.
Yeah.
And it's been
Welcome to the
beautiful.
club.
I know. I never. So I'm retired and I'm getting into archery. I've never done that before. Pickleball, golfing, a lot of family time. I think, yeah, I will tell you, this is my first break in 45 years. When I retired from swimming, I went right back to finishing my degree and I've been working all ever since. So I've never
Mhm.
really had a break. So I'm enjoying this 3 or 4 months and then probably by the end of the summer, think through what I want to do next.
Yeah.
And,
Amazing.
working, either sharing the Olympic experience and working with kids. But right now I'm just enjoying all the family and traveling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was so much fun.
And a good
Great
team.
conversation.
Appreciate you. I love that you reached out and you never know, your life is full circle, right? We all come back into each other's lives.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link in the show notes, but I highly encourage folks to go out, just do a Google on YouTube and go to Theresa Andrews 1984 Olympics and watch that race. It'll get you hyped up.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and we'll stay in touch.
Thank you. And all the best to you, Michael, and Meta Performance. Good luck. Keep it making the impact on athletes and business people.
All right. Thank you.